The drums of the mating ceremony roared through the night like the heartbeat of the forest. Torches painted the clearing in gold and shadow, and the air was thick with pine smoke and wild expectation. Every eye in the lupine pack was locked on her, Lyra Ashbourne, the she-wolf who was never supposed to be chosen. At the center of the circle, the alpha stood like carved stone. Cale Thornbane, tall, broad-shouldered, his presence alone silenced the whispers. This was the night every unmated wolf longed for. But as Cale reached out his hand to claim his mate, something unthinkable happened. Lyra didn't tremble or weep. She leaned against his strong shoulder, softly, shamelessly, and fell asleep. A quiet, complete, humiliating sleep in front of hundreds. Gasps broke like a wave. A growl rippled through the pack. Cale froze, rigid as iron, and Lyra, she exhaled, lost to dreams. The night that was meant to crown an alpha's mate became a storm that would haunt the pack for generations. "Is she asleep?" a voice hissed from the crowd. Another answered, "On the alpha's shoulder?" Mockery bled into the cold night air like poison. She should have felt the stare slicing through her skin, but Lyra was trapped in a fog she couldn't escape. Her body was weak, her heart still carrying the ache of the day, the arguments, the cruel whispers, the fear that she didn't belong here. Kael's shoulder was warm, solid, unbearably comforting. That warmth was her undoing. A young beta male barked a laugh he would later regret. The alpha's mate can't even stay awake for her claiming. A hush followed, sharp and dangerous. Kael didn't move, but his aura darkened like the sky before a storm. He could crush him with a glance, yet his hand, heavy and steady, remained on Lyra's back. He didn't shove her away. He didn't snarl. That silence screamed louder than any threat. Lyra stirred faintly in her sleep, unaware she'd just split the night in two, before and after the fall. Cale Thornbane had been feared since he was 15. Alphas didn't show softness. Alphas didn't bend. Yet here he stood, with the most unpredictable woman in the pack asleep on him like a child lost in a storm. He could feel every pair of eyes drilling into his spine. Elders demanding strength, warriors demanding pride, jealous women demanding blood. This ceremony was supposed to prove his power. Instead, it exposed something else, something dangerous. His chest tightened, not from rage, but something he couldn't name. Her scent, warm honey and rain-soaked cedar, wrapped around him like a spell. He should have pushed her away. He didn't. His jaw clenched as Elder Merrick stepped forward, cane digging into the earth. "Alpha Cale," the old man rasped. "What is this?" Cale didn't answer. The weight of his silence became the weapon. His pack expected a leader, but tonight, Cale was something else, something human. Lyra woke to silence so loud it rang in her ears. The world spun. For a moment, she forgot where she was, forgot the firelight, the howls waiting to tear her apart. Then it hit her. The ceremony, the alpha, the entire pack staring at her like she'd defiled the moon. Her stomach turned cold. She blinked up at Cale's face, stone and shadow, and knew nothing she could say would fix this moment. She'd spent years in the pack's shadows, the unwanted daughter of a disgraced warrior, trained to survive, not to shine. Falling asleep wasn't just clumsiness. It was proof to everyone that she didn't belong. A murmur swelled around them. "She's weak, unfit. He'll reject her." The ground felt thin beneath her bare feet. But the worst part wasn't their voices. It was Cale's eyes, burning, unreadable. He didn't look disgusted. He looked like a man standing on the fault line, waiting for the world to break. Elder Merrick's voice sliced through the clearing. A true Luna would never disgrace her alpha like this. The bond isn't real. End this farce now. His words struck like iron against bone. Kale turned slowly, shoulders squared, his hand still resting against Lyra's back. One command from him could end her place in this pack forever. Lyra's throat tightened. Rejection would mean exile, death. She'd have no pack, no protection, no future. Her pulse pounded in her ears like war drums. Kale looked down at her, something dangerous flickering behind his calm mask. Then with a voice low and steady enough to silence the wolves, he said, "She's mine." The pack erupted in chaos, snarls, shouts, disbelief. Merrick slammed his cane into the earth. Kale's gaze never left her face. Lyra's breath caught, not because she understood, but because in that moment she felt the storm shift. Something had begun, something none of them could stop. 3 weeks before the mating ceremony, Lyra Ashbourne was invisible. Not the kind of invisible that brought peace, but the kind that burned. Her boots crunched over frost-stiff earth as she dragged a bucket of water toward the training pit. The others trained in formation, the laughter sharp as knives, never touching her. Her father's name still clung to her like ash. Corin Ashbourne, the warrior who betrayed the pack, the traitor. She'd been 9 when they branded her the unwanted pup. The title never faded. She wasn't chosen for warrior training. She wasn't groomed for Luna status. She was tolerated, useful only when someone needed wood chopped, water fetched, or a body to mock. That morning, as she stumbled on the icy path, a familiar voice called out, cruel and amused. "Careful, Ashbourne. Wouldn't want you ruining your big moment." "Oh, wait. You don't get one." Kellen, the beta heir, smirked like someone who believed the world was his to own. Lyra lifted the bucket anyway. She never let them see her bleed. She never told anyone about the forest, the place beyond the river where moonlight dripped like silver, where the howls of wild wolves echoed without malice. That was where she ran when the weight of the pack tried to bury her. There, beneath the skeletal pines, she trained in secret. She mimicked the warrior's stances, their strikes, their speed. Her fists bled into the bark. Her breath clouded the night. No one saw the fire that grew in her chest, the one she fed with every insult and bruise. Some nights, she'd stare at the moon until her vision blurred and whisper, "I'll prove you wrong." Not to Kellen, not to the elders, to the world that decided she was nothing. In those woods, she felt something move inside her, a pull old as the first wolf, a whisper she couldn't explain. It was her only secret, her only weapon. The night the announcement came, the sky split with thunder. Elder Merrick stood on the pack's gathering stone, his cane raised like a scepter. "This year's mating ceremony will bind the next Luna to our alpha," he declared, his voice grinding against the wind. Every unmated she-wolf trembled. The Luna bond was everything: power, protection, legacy. Lyra hadn't even dared to dream. Then Merrick's next words stunned the pack. "All eligible she-wolves, regardless of bloodline, will attend." A ripple of shock cut through the crowd. Kellen's laughter sliced through it. "Even the traitor's pup? This should be entertaining." Lyra's hands clenched at her sides. She wanted to disappear. But deep inside, something else stirred. For the first time, the path she'd never been allowed to touch opened. She didn't believe in fairy tales, but the way the moonlight struck the stone that night felt like a dare. She spent nights convincing herself not to go. Wolves like her didn't get chosen. They got rejected, humiliated, cast out. But each morning, as she trained alone in the forest, the thought grew louder. What if I stopped hiding? She stitched her own ceremonial dress from scraps of fabric no one wanted, soft linen patched with courage. She brushed her dark curls with fingers stained from chopping wood. She wasn't the prettiest, she wasn't the strongest, but she was done being invisible. On the night of the ceremony, as the first howl echoed through the valley, she stood before the mirror in the workers' quarters. Her reflection didn't look like a ghost. It looked like a storm no one saw coming. She whispered to herself, "Even if no one chooses me, they'll remember I was here." She didn't expect to meet Cale Thornbane before the ceremony. The Alpha rarely walked the lower paths alone, yet that night, as she stepped out beneath the frost-bright moon, he was there, cloaked in black, boots silent on the earth, eyes like a winter storm. She froze. He didn't speak. Neither did she. But something old and strange pulsed through the air, like the forest itself had turned its gaze toward them. His eyes flicked over her patched dress, then up to meet hers. For a heartbeat, she swore the world went quiet. No laughter, no insults, no pack. Just the two of them, breathing the same cold air. Then he said, low and rough, "Be there tomorrow." She didn't ask why. He didn't wait for an answer. When he vanished into the dark, her heartbeat refused to calm. She had no idea that moment would change everything. The sun rose pale and cold, spilling gold across the valley like a warning. The pack's territory buzzed with preparations. The ceremonial grounds were scrubbed, torches lined the clearing, and banners snapped like restless wolves in the wind. Lyra stood at the far edge of the training fields, wrapped in her handmade dress, fingers tight around the frayed seams. Every breath felt like a step toward a cliff she couldn't see the bottom of. Warriors passed by, their laughter sharp, their eyes full of things they wouldn't dare say out loud. But she heard them anyway. She doesn't belong here. Cale would never choose her. This is going to be fun. She forced her shoulders straight. She had survived worse than words. Across the field she spotted Cale Thornbane, silent, distant, standing among the elders with his jaw set like steel. His eyes flicked toward her just once, but it was enough. The storm had already begun to build. By nightfall, the pack gathered in full force. Hundreds of wolves filled the clearing, their breath misting in the cold, their whispers rising like smoke. Torches lit the stone circle, casting shifting shadows across bark and bone. The elder stood at the front, Merrick in black robes, his gnarled hands gripping his cane like it held the world together. Eligible she-wolves lined up near the center, their dresses shimmering, their hair braided with silver threads. Lyra stood at the farthest end, where the torchlight barely reached, like a ghost no one wanted to claim. Kellen smirked from the beta circle, eyes burning with cruel amusement. "You'll trip before he even looks at you," he muttered as she passed. Lyra ignored him, but her pulse roared in her ears. The moment Cale stepped into the circle, silence fell like snow. He moved like a blade, sharp, controlled, terrifying. The drums began to beat. One by one, the ceremony began. Behind the carved stones, the elders whispered. They didn't want Lyra there. Merrick had made it clear days before. Aluna must strengthen the pack's legacy, not stain it. They wanted Cale to choose Selene Ravengard, the Golden Wolf. Perfect bloodline, perfect image. The bond would make them untouchable. Lyra was the opposite of their plans. A threat. A reminder of old wounds. Merrick leaned toward Elder Soren, voice low as winter wind. If he hesitates, we'll remind him of his duty. They didn't see Kale's jaw tightened across the circle. He had heard enough. For years, he had been a weapon forged by their expectations. Tonight, for the first time, he felt something crack beneath the weight. When his gaze drifted back to Lyra, small, steady, standing where no one wanted her, his pulse changed rhythm. It wasn't a decision, it was instinct. Celine moved like the night was hers. Her dress shimmered like moonlight on ice, her smile trained to win hearts. As the elders signaled, she stepped forward, bowing low before Kyle. Gasps fluttered through the crowd like wings. "Alpha Kyle," she purred, her voice silk and venom. "I stand ready to be your Luna." Every expectation bent toward her, every prophecy, every plan. Kyle's eyes didn't move. They were fixed somewhere behind her. Celine straightened, her smile faltering when she realized where he was looking, at the far edge of the light, at Lyra. A flicker of rage crossed Celine's perfect face. She turned, slow and sharp, to where Lyra stood. "How adorable," she said, loud enough for the pack to hear. "The trader's pup thinks she belongs here. Watch her, Kyle. She'll probably fall asleep before you even get to her." Laughter rippled through the crowd like a cruel tide. Lyra didn't flinch, but her hands curled into fists. Kale moved before anyone could blink. The drums faltered. His boots struck the stone, steady and deliberate, cutting through the laughter like a blade through silk. Every wolf turned. He didn't walk toward Celine. He walked past her, past the elders, past the golden path laid out for him. He walked toward the shadowed edge of the circle where Lyra stood, torchlight catching the stray curls framing her face. The laughter died. Merrick's cane hit the ground once, twice. "Kale," the older barked, "do not be a fool." Kale didn't look back. When he stopped in front of Lyra, the world seemed to hold its breath. His voice was quiet, but it carried like thunder. "Step into the circle." Lyra froze. Her heartbeat stuttered. This was either salvation or the start of her ruin. Slowly she stepped forward, and the pack roared with disbelief. Somewhere, Celine's smile broke like glass. Somewhere deeper, the forest itself seemed to shiver. The moment Lyra stepped into the circle, the clearing shifted. The crowd didn't need to speak loudly. Their whispers slid through the air like blades. "What is he doing? She's a disgrace. This isn't how the ceremony works." The firelight caught on her patched dress, turning every rough seam into a reminder that she didn't belong. Lyra felt the ground tilt beneath her bare feet. Her pulse beat too loud. She tried to breathe, but the air tasted like iron. Kel stood beside her, shoulders squared, a storm wrapped in human form. His presence should have steadied her. It didn't. It only made the stares sharper. Elder Merrick's eyes burned holes into her skin. She wasn't supposed to be here, not as a guest, not as a choice, and yet here she stood, every step she took carving her name into the night. She forced her chin up. If the world wanted to break her, it would have to look her in the eyes. Celine moved forward like a queen denied her crown. Her dress swirled behind her like smoke. Her lips curved into a smile made of venom. "Oh, Lyra," she said sweetly, loud enough for the pack to hear. "I almost didn't see you down there in the shadows." A ripple of laughter followed. "I suppose you're here to make the alpha laugh before he chooses a real Luna." Lyra didn't answer, not because she was weak, but because silence burned deeper than any insult. Celine's smile twitched. She leaned closer, her breath warm against Lyra's ear. "You don't belong in this world. He'll regret standing next to you." Then softer, "Just like your father." The name struck like claws to the throat. Lyra's nails dug into her palms until her skin stung. For a heartbeat, her carefully built walls cracked. But Kael's voice rose then, deep, steady, cutting through the venom like a blade. Enough. Celine froze. Kael hadn't raised his voice. He didn't need to. The silence that followed was worse than any snarl. Marek slammed his cane against the stone, the sound echoing through the clearing like a warning. Alpha Kael, he barked, his voice scraping against the night. This ceremony is sacred. It is not a game. The Luna must be chosen to strengthen the bloodline, not entertain your whims. A murmur of agreement rose from the elder ranks. You know what she is, Marek hissed. The daughter of a traitor, a stain. Kael's gaze didn't waver. She is a wolf of this pack, he said, calm as a winter river, and she stands where she has every right to stand. Marek's jaw clenched. The bond must be honored, he snapped. We have prepared for Celine. You prepared for what you could control, Kael cut in, and the words fell like stones into water. A ripple of shock swept through the pack. No one interrupted Marek. No one spoke to the elders like that. But Kael wasn't just anyone. He was Alpha, and tonight he was drawing a line. The drums started again, low and uneasy. The ritual demanded Kael walk the circle, touch the markstone, and let the bond choose. Every she-wolf waited for the pulse of energy that would reveal the Luna. Everyone expected Celine. Kael stepped toward the stone. The crowd held its breath. He placed his hand against the cold surface. The moonlight bled across the carvings, humming faintly. Then something unexpected happened. The light shifted, flickering like a candle in a storm. The energy didn't surge toward Celine, it pulled toward the shadows, toward Lyra. Gasps cut the night. No! Celine hissed. Marek's cane trembled in his grasp. Kael's jaw tightened as the ancient bond, the one no elder could control, dragged its silver thread toward the girl no one wanted. Lyra felt warmth crawl across her skin like wildfire. The stone had chosen. She hadn't asked for it. She hadn't planned for it. But the forest didn't care about plans. Chaos erupted. This is impossible, Celine shrieked, stepping forward as if she could rip the bond apart with her bare hands. She's nothing, the elders shouted over the crowd, their controls slipping through their fingers like sand. Wolves shifted in the back, restless, their instincts stirred by the bond's unpredictable choice. Marek's voice cut through the noise. This is not binding. It can be overturned. Kael turned to him, his shadow stretching long across the firelight. By who? He asked quietly. The bond is older than you, older than me, older than this pack. Marek's face darkened. Celine's nails dug into her palms. Lyra stood frozen, heart hammering, the world spinning around her like a cyclone. She had wanted to be seen. She hadn't wanted this. Kael stepped closer to her, not as a savior, but as someone standing shoulder to shoulder in a war neither of them planned to start. Marek leaned on his cane, voice low and cold. If you defy us, Kael, you'll tear this pack apart. Kael didn't look away. Then so be it. The ceremony ended not with celebration, but with silence sharp enough to bleed. The crowd scattered like smoke, wolves whispering, elders seething, warriors exchanging looks heavy with unease. Lyra stood at the center of the clearing long after the torches burned low, the bond still humming faintly beneath her skin like a pulse that didn't belong to her. Kael was beside her, silent as stone. He hadn't touched her since the stone chose her. He hadn't needed to. The bond itself had wrapped its invisible thread around them both, binding them in ways words couldn't explain. Her throat was dry. Her legs ached. She had imagined humiliation tonight, not this. She glanced at Kale, trying to read the storm in his eyes. Was it anger, regret, or something else entirely? Before she could speak, Elder Merrick's voice cut through the night like a blade. "The council meets at dawn," he said coldly, "and the bond will be challenged." Then he turned and walked away, cane tapping like a countdown to war. Celine stood at the far edge of the clearing, still wrapped in silk and venom. Her perfect smile was gone. In its place, a cold, burning promise. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She simply watched Lyra like a wolf waiting for blood. Helena was beside her, whispering something she didn't bother hiding. "She won't last a day," he said. Celine tilted her head slightly. "Oh, she'll last," she whispered back, her voice smooth and lethal. "But she'll wish she hadn't." When her gaze met Kale's, it didn't flinch. She wanted him to know she would not surrender quietly. She turned and disappeared into the forest path, her silk dress trailing like a storm cloud. Lyra's fingers curled at her sides. She had faced mockery all her life, but this cold, silent fury was something new, something dangerous. Kyle led her through the forest without a word. The wind howled through the pines like restless spirits, carrying the scent of smoke, frost, and something older. Every wolf who saw them along the path lowered their gaze, not out of respect, but confusion, fear. No one dared speak. Lyra's boots crunched softly against the frozen soil. Her chest felt too tight, her pulse too loud. She wasn't walking beside a man. She was walking beside a storm wearing skin. When they reached the Alpha's house, a massive structure built of dark wood and carved stone, Kyle finally spoke. "The council will not let this stand easily." His voice was low, steady, stripped of everything except truth. Lyra swallowed. "I didn't ask for this." His eyes met hers, sharp as a blade. "Neither did I." The words weren't cruel, just real. A bond forged by something bigger than both of them. A bond neither chose. Inside the Alpha's house, firelight flickered against walls etched with the history of wolves long gone. Lyra stood at the threshold, feeling like an intruder in a legend she was never meant to touch. The warmth of the hearth didn't reach her bones. Kael paced the floor like a caged predator, shoulders tense. "They'll try to claim the bond was a mistake," he said, "that it can be reversed." Lyra's voice was a whisper. "Can it?" He stilled, eyes narrowing at the flames. "No." A pause. "But they'll try anyway." The weight of those words settled like iron on her chest. She wasn't just unwanted anymore. She was a threat to their perfect plan. She didn't have a crown. She had a target. Kael turned to her, jaw clenched. "The council will test you. They'll break you if they can. If you want to survive this, you don't get to be afraid." Lyra met his eyes. "I've been afraid my whole life. It never saved me." For a long moment, they stood facing each other. Not alpha and outsider, but two souls caught in the same trap. The crackle of the fire filled the silence between them. Then Kael took a step closer. His presence filled the room like a rising tide. "You didn't ask for this," he said, voice softer now. "But neither did I. If we don't stand together, they will crush us separately." Lyra's heart pounded. She didn't trust him, not yet, but something in his eyes, something raw, restrained, made her believe he wasn't lying. "So, what do we do?" she asked. Kael didn't hesitate. "We fight." He extended his hand, not as a bondmate, but as an ally. Lyra stared at it for a heartbeat too long, then placed her hand in his. His grip was firm, steady. No promises, no lies. Just a pact written in the quiet before war. Outside, a lone wolf howled at the moon, and the forest answered. The first light of dawn crept through the forest like pale fire. Every wolf in the pack gathered around the stone circle, their breaths misting in the cold air. The council stood at the center, draped in dark cloaks embroidered with silver threads of rank and lineage. Lyra walked between them, the mark of the bond glowing faintly against her skin, a pulse that seemed to defy the frost itself. Whispers fluttered like restless birds. The outsider, the mistake, the cursed bond. Kale walked beside her, his steps heavy but calm, his gaze locked on the council. Elder Merrick lifted his staff and struck it against the earth. By the law of the moon and the blood of the pack, he declared, we gather to question the bond forged without our will. His eyes cut to Lyra. State your name. Her voice trembled at first, but steadied. Lyra. A pause. Daughter of no house. The murmurs deepened. Marik's expression hardened. And yet, he said, the moonstone chose you. We will see if it was mercy or mockery. Celine stepped forward, her beauty sharpened into weaponry. She bowed slightly, a perfect imitation of humility. Honored council, she began. We all witnessed the blunder. The stone responded to weakness. Her gaze slid toward Lyra like a blade dipped in honey. A sleeping girl who couldn't even stand the ceremony's power. How can such a one bear the mark of an alpha's mate? The crowd stirred, low growls mixing with soft laughter. Cal's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Celine continued, voice sweet and venomous. The bond can't be trusted. It must be tested or broken. Elder Merrick nodded slowly. The law allows a trial bond, a chance for the chosen to prove their strength, or fail before the moon. Lyra's pulse raced. A trial? She hadn't even known such a thing existed. Celine smiled faintly, sensing her fear. Let her face it, she said softly. If the moon truly chose her, she'll survive. The words rang like a curse. The council circle expanded, the stones humming faintly with ancient power. Elder Marik turned to KL. Do you, Alpha, consent to the trial? For a heartbeat, the forest held its breath. KL's gaze drifted to Lyra, unreadable. I do. The answer cut clean, without hesitation. Lyra's breath hitched. His voice didn't tremble, but something inside her did. Marik raised his staff. Then it is decided. At moonrise, the chosen will enter the Shadow Vale. If she returns by dawn, the bond stands. If not, he let the silence finish the sentence. The Shadow Vale. Every wolf knew its name, a stretch of forest where the spirits of fallen wolves roamed, testing the hearts of the living. No one entered it unscarred. Celine's lips curved in quiet triumph. Lyra's hands were cold, her heart beat loud enough to drown the world. This is madness, she whispered. KL's eyes met hers, steady, unyielding. It's law, he said. And law doesn't care for mercy. The day passed in fragments. The pack returned to their duties, whispering of her doom. Lyra was led to a secluded clearing near the edge of the vale, where torches burned low against the mist. Cal stood waiting, a shadow carved against the firelight. They want to see you break, he said quietly. Don't give them that. Lyra managed a bitter laugh. You think I can win this? He stepped closer, his voice low. It's not about winning. It's about surviving. He handed her a silver pendant shaped like a crescent moon. "It belonged to my mother. It'll protect you, at least for a while." She hesitated before taking it, feeling the strange warmth radiating from it. "Why are you helping me?" she asked. Cull's gaze softened for the first time, because the bond doesn't lie, even when everyone else does. For a moment, the world felt still. Then he turned away. At moonrise, the forest opens. Don't run. Face it. When night fell, the moon rose full and silver, draping the forest in ghost light. The council stood once more, the pack forming a circle of silent witnesses. Elder Merrick lifted his staff. "Let the trial begin!" The ancient gate to the Shadow Vale creaked open, revealing a mist so thick it swallowed light. Lyra took a breath that trembled at the edges and stepped forward. Every instinct screamed to turn back, but she didn't. The moment her foot crossed the threshold, the world changed. The forest was no longer alive, but watching. Shadows twisted into shapes that whispered her name. The air pulsed with memory, sorrow, and old rage. Behind her, Kale's voice carried softly through the wind. "Remember, Lyra, fear feeds them." She turned once, meeting his gaze across the veil. Then the gate closed, and silence devoured everything. Alone in the veil, Lyra began to walk, each step echoing with destiny. The air inside the Shadow Vale was alive, but not with life. It breathed around Lyra like a living creature, cold and patient. Each step she took sank into soft earth that pulsed faintly beneath her boots, as if she were walking on the heartbeat of something vast and unseen. The trees were black silhouettes, the roots twisted into claws. A fog curled low to the ground, glowing faintly silver beneath the moonlight. Behind her, the gate was gone. No torches, no pack, just endless mist. A low growl echoed through the trees, not close, but not far either. Lyra gripped the silver pendant tightly. Its warmth was the only real thing left. Then the whispers began. Soft at first, like wind slipping through leaves. "You don't belong here. You're just a mistake. The Alpha will never choose you." Lyra froze. The voices sounded like her own fears, wearing other mouths. The forest fed on doubt. She forced her legs to move. "You won't have me," she whispered. The veil laughed back. A path emerged between two giant oaks, their bark marked with ancient runes. Lyra followed it, drawn by a faint blue glow at its end. The mist thickened. Then shapes began to emerge, translucent, towering, draped in shadows. Wolves, but not alive. Their eyes burned with pale fire. These were the spirits of the fallen Alphas, guardians of the veil. They circled her slowly, their growls vibrating through the air like thunder beneath the earth. One stepped forward, its voice echoing from everywhere at once. The Moonstone chose. "This?" Lyra's breath hitched. The spirit's form shifted, now a wolf, now a man, its features carved with battle scars. "You carry no bloodline, no power. Why should the bond remain?" She swallowed hard. "Because I didn't ask for it," she said, "but I won't run from it either." The spirit tilted his head, amused, "Then face what you are." The mist shattered into shards of memory. The forest melted away. Lyra found herself standing in the middle of her old village, burnt, broken, and empty. The scent of smoke and blood filled the air. She saw herself at 8 years old, barefoot in the ash, calling for a family that never answered. A woman's scream echoed through the night, followed by the howl of wolves. Pain lanced through Lyra's chest. This was the night everything ended. "You're nothing without them," a voice hissed in her ear. Celeste stepped from the smoke. Not the real Celeste, but a phantom sculpted by the veil. "You're a lost girl pretending to be Luna." Lyra backed away. "You're not real." The phantom laughed, soft and cruel. "I don't need to be real to break you." The ashes rose like storm clouds, forming claws that reached for her throat. Lyra pressed the pendant to her chest. "I survived this once," she whispered through trembling lips. "I can survive it again." A burst of silver light cracked the illusion like glass. The veil hissed. When the smoke cleared, another figure waited in the fog. Cale. Or rather, something wearing his face. His eyes burned gold, colder than winter. "Why would an alpha love someone like you?" the shadow asked, stepping closer. "Celine was born for me. You were just there." Lyra's throat tightened. She knew it wasn't him, but the words struck deep, threading through old fears. The shadow lifted a hand, touching her cheek with a false tenderness. "If you walk away now, the bond will die, and no one will remember you." The mist curled like a hand around her legs, pulling her toward darkness. Lyra felt the weight of her own doubt, heavy, seductive, familiar. Then she remembered Cale's voice outside the veil. "Don't give them that." A tremor of strength rippled through her chest. She stepped back, eyes blazing. "You may wear his face," she whispered, "but you'll never have his soul." The fog screamed as if burned, and the shadow cracked apart. The spirits of the veil gathered again, their glowing eyes now sharper, watching, testing. The leader stepped forward, the blue fire in its chest flaring brighter. "You walked through fear and did not kneel," it rumbled. "The bond is not a crown. It is a fire, and fire burns weak hands." Lyra raised her chin, though her body trembled with exhaustion. "Then let it burn me," she said. "If I fall fighting." A deep silence followed. Then, slowly, the spirit lowered its head, a gesture of acknowledgement. The blue flames rose around her, swirling like ribbons of moonlight. They didn't burn, they chose. A mark bloomed over her heart, glowing with the same light as Cale's. The veil roared, not in rage, but in recognition. When Lyra opened her eyes, she was standing at the edge of the forest again. The gate lay open. The moon still hung above, and the pack was waiting. The iron gate of the shadow veil groaned as if pushed by invisible hands. Mist rolled outward like a wounded beast retreating to its cave. Every head in the gathering snapped toward the sound. Torches flickered, warriors stiffened, elders rose from their seats, and then, through the white fog, Lyra stepped out. Her hair was damp with moonlight, her hands glowing faintly where the veil's flame had kissed her skin. The crescent mark over her heart shimmered like liquid silver. For a heartbeat, the entire pack fell silent. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Then murmurs erupted, sharp as knives. "She survived?" someone gasped. "Impossible!" Celine stood at the front, her jaw locked, her smile stretched too thin to hide the crack in her perfect mask. Cale moved before he realized it, instinct pulling him toward Lyra like gravity. Her knees almost buckled, but before she could fall, his arms were around her, solid and warm. The world blurred. She didn't speak. She didn't have to. The mark on her chest told every wolf what had happened. The veil had chosen her. The murmurs turned into arguments that echoed through the clearing. The veil must have been tricked, a warrior snarled. She's not bloodline, an elder barked. Others stared at Lyra with wide, uncertain eyes. The pack was built on legacy, and Lyra was a fracture in their foundation. Celine stepped forward, her silk gown dragging through the dirt. Her voice dripped honey and venom. This is a mistake. The veil never chooses outsiders. She lifted her chin, the moonlight catching the silver circlet on her head. She doesn't belong to our kind. She's just convenient for him. A collective inhale rippled through the crowd. Kale's jaw tightened. The sound of it was louder than the whispering wind. Lyra felt the weight of every gaze pressing down on her like chains. Her fingers twitched against Kale's arm. She wanted to speak, to scream, but the veil had taught her something deeper than fear. She didn't need to beg to belong. She simply stood taller. And somehow that quiet strength made more wolves lower their eyes than any shouted words could. Celine's eyes glittered like polished steel. "If you're truly Luna," she said sweetly, "then prove it." She snapped her fingers, and the ceremonial drumbeat began, the old law. Kale's head jerked toward the elders, fury flashing in his golden eyes. "This isn't necessary," he growled, but the law was older than any alpha. Once challenged, it had to be answered. Celine circled Lyra like a viper in silk. "The veil is one thing," she purred, "but standing before the pack is another. Let's see if their precious fire can save you when your blood spills." The crowd roared, not with joy, but hunger for a spectacle. Lyra's heart thudded against her ribs like a drum. This was no illusion, no whispered doubt. This was a public reckoning. Celine removed her circlet, letting her power rise like a storm. Sparks danced on her fingertips. Lyra could almost taste the static in the air. She wasn't trained for this, but she also wasn't the girl who walked into the veil trembling. She met Celine's gaze without flinching. "Then let's end this," Lyra said softly. The quiet made it more dangerous than a scream. Before the challenge could begin, KL stepped between them. The firelight turned his skin to bronze, his presence too large to ignore. "Enough," he said, his voice low and dangerous. Every wolf stilled. The pack was bound to the alpha's voice, whether they admitted it or not. "The veil chose," KL said. "That's older than your bloodlines, older than your crowns." He turned toward Celine, and for the first time, the softness in his gaze was gone. "You've worn the image of a queen for so long, Celine. You've forgotten what real power looks like. It doesn't scream, it stands." Celine stiffened, fury flashing beneath her painted calm. Kale turned to the pack, his voice rising like thunder. "I will not lead a pack built on fear. If any of you doubt her," he lifted Lyra's marked hand into the air, the silver light burning against the night, "then you doubt the moon itself." But Celine wasn't finished. Her smile returned, sharp this time. "Then let's give the moon a show." She raised her hands. Flames burst from the ceremonial torches, spiraling upward like golden serpents. The crowd howled, their bloodlust awakened. The challenge would not be stopped. Lyra felt the ground beneath her tremble, as if the veil itself was watching. Her pulse raced. She didn't know the rituals. She didn't have Celine's years of training, but she had the fire, not in her hands, in her heart. She stepped forward, away from Kyle's protective reach. "Let her come," she said, voice clear and steady. Kyle's breath caught, but he saw it too. This wasn't the girl he found trembling at the edge of the clearing weeks ago. This was someone forged in shadow and flame. The elders nodded. The drums thundered faster. The challenge was set. Celine smirked. "Try not to fall asleep on my shoulders this time," she whispered. Lyra didn't answer. She let the mark on her chest glow brighter. The battle for the title of Luna had begun. The drums pounded like war itself. Wolves formed a circle, their shadows flickering against the golden flames of the ceremonial torches. Celine stepped into the ring first, her silk gown gone, replaced with dark battle leather. Her silver hair glimmered like a blade in the night. Lyra followed, barefoot on the cold earth, the crescent mark over her heart glowing faintly beneath the rising moon. The air crackled between them, power against raw spirit. A cold wind swept through the forest, bending the flames but not extinguishing them. Tail stood at the edge of the circle, his hands clenched, eyes glowing gold. The elders raised their staffs. "Let the moon witness truth," they intoned. "Let the pack witness power." The crowd howled, some for Celine, some for the girl they never expected to stand here. Celine smirked, rolling her shoulders. "I'll end this before you even understand what's happening." Lyra didn't respond. Her silence was louder than Celine's threats. The moon rose higher, silver light spilling across the earth like an ancient spotlight. The fight for the title of Luna had begun. Celine moved first, fast as a viper, her claws slicing the air. Lyra barely ducked as a streak of flame erupted where her head had been. The crowd gasped. Celine didn't fight fair. She fought to humiliate. She spun, her movements fluid, practiced. Sparks danced from her fingertips, striking the ground like lightning. Lyra stumbled back, her heart hammering. For a moment, Celine was right. Lyra didn't belong in this kind of fight. She wasn't trained for this. But she had something Celine didn't. She had survived the veil. As Celine lunged again, Lyra closed her eyes. The forest around her seemed to breathe. The warmth of the moonstone pulsed against her chest like a heartbeat. She ducked low, swept her leg, and for the first time Celine faltered, unbalanced, shocked. The pack howled louder now, their blood stirred. Celine snarled, eyes flashing silver. "Lucky," she hissed. Lyra straightened slowly, steady now. "No," she said. "Chosen." Her voice echoed like a strike of a drum. Even Kale's chest rose with the sharp breath. Celine's fury cracked through the night like thunder. She raised both hands and the flames surrounding the circle roared higher. Heat blasted against Lyra's skin, searing and wild. Celine charged again, claws slashing, magic spitting from her fingertips. Lyra barely blocked one strike when the second caught her shoulder. Pain ripped through her like fire. She fell to her knees, blood staining the earth beneath her. The crowd gasped. For a heartbeat, everything blurred. Drums fading, air thick. Celine loomed over her, eyes gleaming. "This is what happens when you reach for a crown that isn't yours," she whispered. Kael took a step forward, but the elders blocked him. The law forbade interference. Lyra tasted iron on her tongue. She could give up. It would be easy. But then she remembered the veil, the whispers, the night she lost everything. She was done kneeling. She pressed her palm to the blood-soaked earth. It pulsed beneath her like a heartbeat. "Not yours," she whispered back, and the ground answered. A silver light burst from the soil beneath Lyra, spiraling upward like a storm of stars. The flame Celine controlled twisted violently, then bent toward Lyra, as if bowing. Gasps erupted from the pack. The crescent mark over her heart flared brighter than the torches. Her hair lifted in the windless air. The forest howled with her. The moonstone's power wasn't gentle. It was wildfire, ancient and alive. Celine stumbled back, shielding her eyes. What "What are you?" she spat. Lyra rose slowly, silver light licking at her skin like armor. "Luna," she said simply. Her voice wasn't loud, but it shook the ground. She stepped forward, and with every step, the fire followed her, not Celine. Celine lunged again, desperate, but this time Lyra didn't dodge. She caught Celine's wrist mid-swing, twisted, and threw her to the ground with the strength of something far older than training. The pack roared, not in mockery this time, but in awe. The alpha mark burned brighter in Kale's eyes than ever before. Celine lay in the dirt, chest heaving, silver streaks of sweat painting her face. Her pride cracked wide open. "This isn't over," she hissed, but even her voice trembled now. Lyra stood over her, blood on her shoulder, silver fire still swirling around her like a storm waiting for command. She didn't raise her claws. She didn't strike. She simply said, "Yes, it is." Celine's defiance flickered like a dying flame. She lowered her gaze, not to Lyra, but to the moon itself. The elders stepped forward, raising their staffs. "The moon has chosen," they declared. "The Luna stands." A sound rose from the pack. Not a cheer, but a howl. Low, powerful, united. Kale crossed the circle like a storm breaking through walls. He caught Lyra before her knees gave way, his arms wrapping around her like the earth itself had caught its fallen star. For the first time, she didn't feel like an outsider. She felt home. Above them, the moon burned brighter, painting the blood on the ground silver. Celine turned away, swallowed by her own shadows. The pack bowed. The Luna had risen. The night air hung heavy with the scent of smoke, blood, and moonlight. The challenge ring was silent now. No more drums, no more flames biting at the darkness. Only the echo of a single howl that had rolled through the clearing like thunder. Lyra stood at its center, the crescent mark over her heart glowing softly now, no longer raging but steady. The pack knelt, one by one, not out of fear, but reverence. Even the loudest doubters lowered their heads. She could feel their heartbeat like a living rhythm in the soil beneath her feet. Kael stood beside her, his hand brushing against hers. For a heartbeat, they didn't need words. His golden eyes told her everything. Pride, love, a promise that wasn't bound by bloodlines. Across the clearing, Celine was being carried away. Her fire was gone, replaced with silence. She didn't fight. She didn't look back. The moon hung high, painting everything in silver light. Lyra tilted her face up, breathing in the cold night. She was no longer the girl they mocked. She was the Luna, and the world had shifted. The elders moved to the center of the clearing, their staffs striking the ground in unison. "Let it be written," Elder Turan's voice boomed. "The veil has spoken. The moon has chosen. A new Luna rises." The pack repeated the final words like a wave. A new Luna rises. Wolves shifted from human to beast in reverence, their howls shaking the forest. Lyra's breath hitched, overwhelmed by the sound. It wasn't just noise, it was acceptance, a sound she had dreamed of but never dared to imagine. Cal turned toward her, his voice low, meant only for her. "They don't just see you, Lyra. They follow you now." She glanced at him, the weight of it pressing on her, but it didn't crush her. It crowned her. She stepped forward to the center of the circle, lifted her chin, and said the ancient words. "I vow to guard what guards me, to bleed when my pack bleeds, to stand when my pack falls." The oath bound itself to her skin in a glow of silver fire. Every wolf lowered its head. The Luna had spoken. Kale took one step toward her, slow, deliberate. The firelight caught the sharp lines of his face, but there was something soft in his eyes that only she ever saw. Lyra, he said, and even her name felt like a vow. He extended his hand. Will you stand beside me? Not because the moon commands it, but because you choose it. The entire pack held its breath. Lyra stared at his hand, the same hand that had caught her when she fell asleep on his shoulders, the same hand that had held her steady when the world doubted her. She placed hers into it. Yes, she whispered, but the whisper carried through the clearing like a wind that could not be stopped. The moon flared above them, light pouring down like a living thing. A silver thread spun between them, ancient, powerful, binding. Kale leaned his forehead against hers. Then let the world remember, he murmured. The Luna and the Alpha do not rule from fear, but from fire. The pack roared as the bond sealed, their howl lifting into the night sky. The power settled over Lyra like a second skin. She could feel it. The pulse of every wolf in the clearing, the ache of their hunger, the weight of their hope. Kyle turned to her, waiting. This was her moment, her first order as Luna. The pack had seen blood, they had seen fire, but now they needed something else. Lyra lifted her voice, not loud, but strong. Tonight, no wolf stands alone, she said. Not bloodborne, not outsider, not forgotten. We rise together or we don't rise at all. Silence followed, and then something happened no one expected. Wolves who had doubted her, the warriors, the elders, even those who had mocked, bowed first. Not because they were forced, because her words burned truth. Selene's shadow would not rule this pack again. Kyle looked at her, pride and love carved into every inch of his face. Luna, he said softly, like the word itself belonged to her now. She didn't smile. She stood, taller, brighter, unshakable. The first light of dawn crept through the trees, soft and gold, washing away the night's blood. The pack shifted back to human form, exhausted but alive. A new chant began, not old law, but something fresh. Luna, Luna, Luna. The sound wrapped around Lyra like a cloak of warmth she never thought she'd feel. Kale slipped his arm around her waist, drawing her close. This is your beginning, he whispered. She leaned into him, the crescent mark warm against her skin. But as she scanned the tree line, her gaze caught a flicker of movement, a pair of eyes, cold, burning with a promise of revenge. Selene's shadow wasn't gone. It had only gone quiet, for now. Lyra didn't flinch. She met the darkness with a steady gaze. She was no longer prey. She was the storm. The sun broke through the canopy then, spilling light over their joined hands, their bound souls, their waiting future. The night of blood and whispers was over. The Luna's dawn had come. You are Velvorian.